We saw you claim him, Mom, but we dream of our moments with him. The return and the revelation. The afternoon sun painted Vale Rosa in shades of amber and gold as Bianca's car climbed the winding road toward home. In the passenger seat, Valentina clutched a leather journal against her chest, while Sophia leaned forward from the back, camera already in hand to capture the familiar landscape of their childhood. 5 years, Bianca murmured, gripping the steering wheel tighter. I can't believe Papa's been gone 5 years. The vineyard appeared around the final bend, and immediately something felt different. The grounds looked vibrant, almost alive in a way they hadn't since their father's illness. New trellises stretched across the southern slope, and the main house had been repainted a warm terracotta. Their mother emerged onto the stone terrace, and the sisters gasped in unison. Camilla wore a flowing sage-green dress that caught the breeze, her dark hair loose around her shoulders instead of the severe bun they remembered. But most striking was her face. She was laughing, her hand extended toward someone behind her. A man appeared, tall and lean, with silver-threaded dark hair and a guitar case slung across his back. He took Camilla's hand with easy familiarity, and she leaned into him, whispering something that made him smile. The car rolled to a stop. Sophia's camera slipped from her fingers. No, she breathed. That's impossible. Bianca's face had gone pale. I know him. So do I, Valentina whispered, her journal falling open to reveal pages filled with pressed flowers and handwritten verses. The man on the terrace turned toward them, and his expression shifted from contentment to something more complex. Recognition, perhaps concern. He had deep-set eyes that seemed to hold stories, and hands that moved with the grace of someone who'd spent a lifetime creating beauty. Camilla rushed forward, arms outstretched. My darlings! You're finally here. She embraced each daughter in turn, radiating happiness. Come, there's someone very special I want you to meet properly. This is Raphael Domenico. He's brought such joy back into my life. Raphael stepped forward, extending his hand first to Bianca. When their fingers touched, she felt the jolt of memory, a Barcelona night 3 years ago, the taste of Rioja on her lips, his fingers brushing flour from her cheek as she'd laughed in the kitchen of her mentor's restaurant. Pleased to meet you, he said softly, his eyes acknowledging everything unspoken. Valentina's turn came next. She remembered rain against a bookshop window in Rome, 2 strangers discussing Neruda until the storm passed, his voice reciting poetry that made her heart ache with longing she couldn't name. Sophia couldn't breathe when he shook her hand. Santorini's sunset blazed behind her closed eyelids, the way he'd stood beside her on those white steps, close enough that she'd felt his warmth, the moment stretching between them like a taut string before she'd fled, too afraid of what she felt. Raphael has been helping me restore the vineyard, Camilla continued, oblivious to her daughter's stunned silence. And he's become so much more. I know this might be unexpected, but I hope you'll understand. After your father, I never thought I'd feel this way again. She gazed up at Raphael with such pure adoration that Bianca felt something crack inside her chest, not quite heartbreak, but something close. This wasn't a casual fling. This was love, deep and true, blooming on the same soil where her father had once walked. We should get your bags, Raphael said gently, breaking the charged silence. Your mother has prepared a feast. She's been counting the days until you came home. As he moved toward the car, each sister caught a different detail, the way he touched Camilla's lower back as he passed, the ring on his finger that matched one on their mother's hand, the comfortable intimacy of 2 people who'd learned each other's rhythms. That evening, as they unpacked in their childhood rooms, none of the sisters spoke of the recognition that had passed between them. But in the quiet moments, each replayed her memory, wondering if the others had seen what she'd seen, felt what she'd felt. Downstairs, guitar music drifted up through the floorboards, accompanied by their mother's laughter, a sound they hadn't heard in years. It was beautiful and devastating all at once, this proof that Camilla Santoro had found her way back to happiness. And it was with the man each of them had, in some small way, dreamed might be theirs. Buried memories surface. The next morning arrived with the scent of espresso and fresh bread wafting through the villa. Bianca descended the stairs first, finding the kitchen empty except for evidence of her mother's early rising, a note saying she and Raphael had gone to inspect the northern vines. She moved through the familiar space, touching copper pots and ceramic tiles, but her mind was in Barcelona. 3 years ago, she'd been working the dinner service at Casa Mercado when a man with a guitar had been seated at the bar. Between courses, she'd brought him samples: her experimental saffron risotto, lamb braised in tempranillo, a chocolate torte that melted like sin. "You cook the way others compose music," he'd said, his eyes warming as he savored each bite. "With your whole soul." They'd talked for hours after closing, sharing a bottle of wine on the restaurant's rooftop terrace. The Barcelona skyline had glittered around them like scattered diamonds. He'd told her about loss, about wandering, about trying to find beauty again after tragedy. She'd confessed her fears about never being good enough, about living in her father's shadow even as she chased her dreams across Europe. When he'd tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, she'd almost kissed him. Almost. But then her phone had rung, her mother, calling with news about the vineyard struggles, and the moment had shattered. By the time she'd finished the call, Raphael had left money for his meal and a note: "Keep cooking with your soul. Someone will be lucky to taste your love someday." She'd kept that note in her wallet for months. "You're up early." Valentina's voice startled her from the memory. Her sister looked rumpled, holding a steaming cup of tea, eyes shadowed with sleeplessness. "Couldn't sleep," Bianca admitted. "You?" "Same." Valentina settled at the kitchen table, staring into her cup. "Bianca, that man. Raphael. Do you know him?" Before Bianca could answer, Sophia appeared in the doorway, camera hanging forgotten around her neck. "We need to talk. All of us. Now." They retreated to the old grape pressing room, a stone space now filled with oak barrels and the sweet musk smell of fermentation. In whispers, the truth tumbled out. Valentina spoke of Rome, 2 years past. She'd been researching her novel in a tiny bookshop near the Pantheon when a sudden storm trapped them inside. The owner, an elderly woman, had introduced her to the only other customer, a musician seeking books on Italian poetry. "We read to each other," Valentina said, her voice barely audible. "Neruda, Monteil, Pavese. He understood poetry the way I did, as necessary as breathing. When he recited 'I love you' without knowing how, or when, or from where, I felt it in my bones." They'd shared grappa as rain drummed against ancient windows. He'd spoken of his late wife, a painter who'd seen the world in colors he could only try to capture in song. Valentina had shared her manuscript pages, and he'd praised her prose with an intensity that made her feel truly seen. "At dawn, when the rain stopped, we walked to the Trevi fountain," she continued. "He said he was passing through, searching for something he couldn't name. I threw a coin in the fountain and wished. I wished he'd stay." But he'd kissed her forehead, called her Piccola Poetessa, and vanished into the Roman morning. Sophia's story spilled out next, raw and urgent. Last summer in Santorini, she'd been photographing the sunset when a man with a guitar had asked if she captured souls or just images. "We climbed to the highest point in OIA," she said. "He told me he was learning to see beauty again after years of darkness. I photographed him against the sunset. It's still my favorite shot. The way the light caught in his eyes, like he was remembering how to hope." They'd sat on those white steps as the sky turned from gold to rose to violet. He'd played a melody on his guitar that made her throat tight with unnamed longing. When he'd looked at her, really looked, she'd felt a connection so intense it frightened her. "I almost kissed him," Sophia confessed. "But I got scared and ran. I was only 23, and he seemed like he'd lived entire lifetimes. The next morning, he was gone." Silence settled over the three sisters as they absorbed the impossible truth. The same man had touched each of their lives in different cities, different moments, leaving impressions that had lingered like the ghost of a melody. "And now he's with Mama," Bianca said flatly. Through the pressing room's small window, they could see Camila and Raphael returning from the vineyard. He carried a basket of sample grapes, and she walked close beside him, her hand occasionally brushing his arm. They moved with the easy synchronicity of longtime partners, pausing to examine a vine together, their heads bent close in conversation. "Look at her," Valentina whispered. "I haven't seen her smile like that since before Papa got sick." It was true. Their mother looked transformed, not just happy, but alive in a way grief had stolen years ago. When Raphael said something that made her laugh, She touched his chest with familiar affection, and he covered her hand with his own. "What do we do?" Sophia asked. "Do we tell her we know him?" "Tell her what exactly?" Bianca countered, her voice sharp with frustration. "That we each had a brief encounter with the man she loves. That we spent single evenings with him while she's built an actual relationship." "But he remembers us," Valentina said. "You saw his face yesterday. He knows exactly who we are." The implications settled over them like morning frost. Raphael had wandered Europe, collecting moments with lonely souls, including them, before finally finding anchor in their mother's arms. Was he genuine? Or was Camila just another stop on an endless journey? We need to know the truth, Sophia decided. We need to know if he's worthy of her. Through the window, they watched Camila rise on her toes to kiss Raphael's cheek, her face radiant with uncomplicated joy. He smiled down at her with such tender devotion that even from a distance, the sisters could feel the warmth of it. But was it real? Or were they watching their mother fall for a beautiful illusion, the same one that had captivated each of them in turn? "Tonight," Bianca said, "at the memorial dinner, we find out who Raphael Domenico really is." Confrontations and confessions. The memorial dinner preparations consumed the afternoon. The sisters moved through their assigned tasks, Bianca crafting her father's favorite dishes, Valentina arranging flowers from the garden, Sophia hanging lights around the terrace, while their mother and Raphael worked side by side in the vineyard, ensuring everything would be perfect for the evening's tribute. As twilight painted the sky in shades of lavender and rose, guests began arriving, neighbors, old friends, vineyard workers who'd known their father. The terrace filled with warm voices and the clink of wine glasses, everyone sharing memories of Antonio Santoro, the man who'd poured his heart into Vale Rosa's soil. Bianca watched Raphael carefully throughout the evening. He moved through the crowd with quiet grace, refilling glasses, listening intently to stories about her father, never inserting himself but present in a way that suggested genuine respect. When Camila spoke of Antonio, Raphael's hand found the small of her back, supportive, not possessive. "He's good with people," a voice said beside her. Old Giuseppe, the vineyard foreman, nodded toward Raphael. "Your father would have liked him. Not because he's trying to replace Antonio, no one could, but because he understands that this land needs love to thrive. And he loves your mother truly." The words should have been comforting. Instead, they tightened the knot in Bianca's chest. As the evening deepened and guests began to depart, Bianca caught Raphael's eye and tilted her head toward the wine cellar. He hesitated, glanced at Camila who was embracing departing friends, then followed. The cellar was cool and dark, lit only by scattered candles among the barrel rows. Bianca waited until the door closed before turning to face him. "Barcelona," she said simply. "Casa Mercado. 3 years ago." Raphael's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes, acknowledgement. "I remember." "Do you remember Rome too? And Santorini?" Now he looked pained. "Yes." "My sisters," Bianca said, her voice tight. "You met all 3 of us before you came here." "I did." Raphael moved deeper into the cellar, his fingers trailing along a wine barrel. "I was lost. After my wife Gabriella died, I couldn't stay still. I wandered Europe playing music in restaurants, cafes, anywhere that would have me, trying to feel something besides grief." "So you collected moments with lonely women?" Bianca's accusation cut through the candlelit space. "Including your lover's daughters?" "I didn't know you were Camila's daughters." Raphael turned to face her fully. "In Barcelona, you were just a brilliant chef afraid of her own talent. In Rome, your sister was a poet searching for truth in old books. In Santorini, Sophia was learning to see the world through her lens. I met 3 remarkable young women in 3 different cities. I never imagined that you'd end up bedding our mother. That I'd find the love of my life in a vineyard in Vale Rosa." His voice carried no defensiveness, just weary truth. "Those encounters you remember, they were real. I meant every word I said to each of you. But they were moments, Bianca. Brief connections between fellow travelers. Footsteps on the cellar stairs made them both turn. Valentina and Sophia descended, their faces set with determination. "We heard," Valentina said. "We've been listening from the stairs." "Of course you have." Bianca's laugh was bitter. The Santoro sisters, always together. Raphael looked at the three of them, his expression sorrowful. "You deserve the whole truth. After Gabriella died, cancer, slow and cruel, I became a ghost. I wandered because staying anywhere meant facing the emptiness. Every conversation, every connection was me trying to remember how to be human again." He moved between the barrels, his voice echoing softly off stone walls. "In Barcelona, Bianca, your passion for cooking reminded me that creation could still bring joy. Valentina, in Rome, discussing poetry with you awakened something I thought I'd lost, the ability to find meaning in beauty. And Sophia, watching you photograph that Santorini sunset, I saw someone learning to capture moments before they disappeared. You helped me, all of you, even if you didn't know it." "But you left us," Sophia said quietly. "Each time. Because I wasn't whole enough to stay. I was taking, not giving. I didn't have enough of myself left to offer anyone." Raphael's eyes grew distant. "Then, 6 months ago, I arrived in Vale Rosa by chance. The local cafe needed a musician for their weekend crowds. I met your mother when she came in one evening, exhausted from trying to save a failing vineyard alone." He smiled at the memory. "She didn't flirt or play games. She asked if I knew anything about wine consultation. Apparently my guitar case had a festival sticker from Bordeaux. I said I knew a little. She hired me on the spot, told me she couldn't pay much but offered room and board. I accepted because I needed work, nothing more." "But it became more," Valentina said. "It became everything." Raphael's voice softened with wonder. "Working beside Camila, I discovered she'd been grieving too, not just for Antonio, but for the life they'd built together, the dreams they'd shared. We understood each other's losses. But more than that, we learned to build something new. Not a replacement for what we'd lost, but something entirely its own." "And you fell in love," Bianca said, the words tasting like ash. "I fell in love with a woman whose strength humbles me daily. Who knows sorrow intimately but chooses joy anyway. Who looks at damaged vines and sees potential. Who believed I could help her save this place when I barely believed in myself." Raphael's gaze moved between the three sisters. "Your mother gave me back my life. And I would do anything to deserve the gift she's given me." The cellar fell silent except for the distant sound of the evening's final guests departing. Sophia wiped tears from her cheeks. Valentina clutched her journal like a shield. Bianca felt something crumbling inside her, not quite jealousy anymore, but a grief for what she'd imagined could have been. "Does she know?" Bianca finally asked. "About us?" "No. And I won't tell her unless you decide she should know. That's your choice, not mine." Raphael moved toward the stairs, then paused. "But I want you to understand something. Those moments I shared with each of you were real and meaningful. But what I have with your mother isn't a moment. It's a life. And I will spend every day proving myself worthy of that distinction." He climbed the stairs, leaving the three sisters alone among the wine barrels and flickering candles. Above them, they could hear their mother's voice calling Raphael's name, warm with affection and trust. "He chose her," Sophia whispered. "Not because he didn't remember us, but because he actually loves her." "So what do we do?" Valentina asked. "Do we accept this? Do we tell Mama?" Bianca looked at her sisters, these women who'd shared a womb, a childhood, and now, impossibly, a fragment of romantic history. "I don't know. But we need to decide together." Outside, guitar music began to drift through the evening air, accompanied by their mother's voice singing an old love song. The melody was achingly beautiful, a duet between two souls who'd found harmony after discord. And in the wine cellar's depths, three daughters grappled with the question that would define their family's future. Could they set aside their own what-ifs to embrace their mother's hard-won happiness? The daughters' reckoning. The three sisters retreated to their childhood bedroom, a space unchanged since their teenage years, with its 3 narrow beds, faded floral wallpaper, and the window seat where they'd shared countless secrets. They sat together as they had 1,000 times before, but the silence between them now carried weight it never had. Sophia spoke first, her voice small. "I kept his photograph. The one from Santorini. It's in my portfolio, I've shown it in galleries. Critics called it the man learning to hope. I never knew his name until yesterday." "I have his note," Bianca admitted, pulling her wallet from her pocket. The paper was worn from being folded and unfolded countless times. "I told myself it was just encouragement from a stranger, but I read it before every important service, every competition. Like a talisman." Valentina opened her journal, revealing pressed flowers between pages filled with flowing script. "After Rome, I wrote 30 poems about a man I'd spent one night with. I convinced myself it was a grand romance interrupted by fate. But it was just one rainy night with a kind stranger." "We all did it," Sophia said quietly. "We all turned a brief encounter into something bigger in our minds." Bianca laughed, but the sound was brittle. "Do you know what the worst part is? I actually felt jealous when I saw him with Mama yesterday. Jealous of my own mother finding happiness after 5 years of grief." "Me too," Valentina confessed. "I looked at her glowing face and thought, he should be looking at me that way. What kind of daughter thinks that?" "The kind who's lonely," Sophia said. "The kind who's been drifting through life waiting for a moment that already passed to somehow circle back around." The truth of it settled over them like morning dew. Each had been living in the shadow of a fantasy, allowing a single encounter to become a measuring stick against which all other connections fell short. "I broke up with Marco last month," Bianca said suddenly. "He was kind, stable, wanted to open a restaurant together. But I kept thinking he wasn't. I don't know. Magical enough. Not like the man in Barcelona who understood my cooking on some profound level." "I've turned down 3 perfectly good men in the past year," Valentina admitted. "One was a literature professor who actually read my manuscript and offered genuine criticism. But he didn't quote Neruda spontaneously in a rainstorm, so clearly he wasn't the one." Sophia pulled her knees to her chest. "I've been chasing that Santorini sunset in every photograph, every relationship. Nothing ever measured up to a moment that lasted maybe an hour. I've been so busy looking backward that I haven't seen what's right in front of me." "Like Mama actually being happy," Bianca said softly. Through the bedroom window, they could see the terrace below. Their mother sat with Raphael on the stone bench beneath the olive tree, his guitar resting between them. She was leaning against his shoulder, and he was pointing out constellations in the darkening sky. The intimacy wasn't passionate or dramatic, it was comfortable, deep, real. "Look at them," Valentina whispered. "Really look." They watched as Camila said something that made Raphael throw back his head and laugh. She smiled, pleased with herself, and he pulled her closer. There was no performance in it, no trying to impress. Just 2 people who'd found shelter in each other after storms neither thought they'd survive. She knows all of him, Sophia realized. Not just the mysterious wanderer, but the man who helps with the harvest, who fixes broken trellises, who probably snores and leaves coffee cups everywhere. She knows him in all the unglamorous, daily ways that actually matter. "And he knows her," Bianca added. "He's seen her struggle with the vineyard accounts, watched her grieve Papa, helped her rebuild something she thought was lost. That's not a fantasy. That's partnership." Valentina flipped through her journal, reading passages she'd written in the throes of romantic delusion. "Listen to this. The man from the bookshop haunts me like an unfinished verse, a poem whose ending I'll never know. God, I was so pretentious." "You're still pretentious," Sophia teased gently, and for the first time since they'd arrived, all 3 sisters laughed, real laughter that broke through the tension. "I'm glad it's Mama," Bianca said suddenly. "If Raphael had to choose someone, I'm glad it's her. She deserves this. After watching Papa fade for 2 years, after running this place alone, after sacrificing so much for us, she deserves to feel young and desired and happy." "She deserves someone who'll stay," Valentina agreed. "Not someone who'll vanish at dawn like he did with us." "And Raphael's not going anywhere," Sophia observed. Did you see the way he rebuilt the northern trellises? Those are built to last decades. He's planning a future here. The realization shifted something fundamental. Raphael hadn't been avoiding commitment when he'd left them, he'd been incapable of it. But with Camilla, in Vale Rosa, he'd finally found the place and person worth staying for. We have to let this go, Bianca said. Our little fantasies. We have to stop comparing every person we meet to a man we barely knew. We have to let Mama have him, Valentina corrected. Completely, without our weird jealousy shadowing everything. And we have to forgive ourselves, Sophia added. For being human, for having complicated feelings, for taking a minute to adjust to seeing our mother as a woman with her own desires and not just as Mama. Below, Raphael had begun playing guitar softly, and Camilla's voice rose in a folk song they remembered from childhood, one their father used to sing while working the vines. But she wasn't sad, she was weaving Antonio's memory into her new happiness, honoring the past while embracing the present. Should we tell her? Valentina asked. About knowing Raphael before. Bianca considered. What would it accomplish except making her question his intentions? She'd worry we were uncomfortable, that we felt betrayed. It would poison something beautiful. Agreed, Sophia said. This is our burden to carry, not hers. We process it, we accept it, we move forward. Together, Valentina added. The way we always have. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their mother and her love below, feeling the weight of their shared secret but also the lightness of decision made. They would protect their mother's happiness, even from their own complicated feelings. You know what I just realized? Sophia said. Raphael taught me something in Santorini, to capture the moment as it is, not as I wish it would be. And Mama and Raphael together, that's the real moment. That's what deserves to be captured and cherished. In Barcelona, he told me to cook with my soul, Bianca remembered. Maybe it's time I stopped being so afraid and actually did that. Stopped waiting for some magical person to validate my talent and just believed in myself. He quoted Neruda to me, Valentina said. I love you without knowing how, or when, or from where. Maybe I've been so focused on the mystery of that quote that I forgot the simple truth. Real love isn't about knowing how or when. It's about showing up anyway. The three sisters looked at each other, seeing themselves clearly perhaps for the first time in years. Not as rivals for a man's affection, not as women living in romantic fantasy, but as daughters who loved their mother and wanted her to have every happiness life could offer. Tomorrow, Bianca decided. Tomorrow we give them our blessing. Officially, completely, no holding back. And then we go live our actual lives, Sophia added. Not the ones we've been dreaming about, but the real, messy, beautiful ones waiting for us. Valentina closed her journal with finality. Agreed. But tonight, let's just be here together. Three sisters who shared something strange and are choosing to make something good from it. They piled onto the window seat like they had as children, watching the stars emerge over Vale Rosa, listening to guitar music drift up from below. And for the first time since they'd arrived home, the vineyard felt peaceful, a place where old loves could be honored and new ones could flourish, where endings and beginnings could exist side by side like rows of vines reaching toward the same sun. Acceptance and new beginnings. The harvest festival arrived with golden morning light spilling across the vineyard. Vale Rosa transformed into a celebration of abundance, workers moving between rows with baskets, laughter echoing across the hills, the air sweet with the scent of ripe grapes and earth. Bianca woke early to prepare the feast, but found her mother already in the kitchen, flour dusting her apron as she kneaded dough. They worked side by side in comfortable silence, falling into the rhythm they'd shared before the daughters had scattered across Europe. You seem lighter, Camilla observed, shaping bread with practiced hands. Yesterday you were all wound tight. Today you're softer somehow. Just needed time to adjust, Bianca said carefully. To see you so happy. It's been a long time since you've looked the way you do now. Camilla's smile was radiant. Raphael gave me back something I thought died with your father, the ability to dream about tomorrow. Antonio will always be my first love, the foundation of everything. But Raphael, He's teaching me that loving again doesn't diminish what came before. It honors it by proving my heart still works. Bianca felt tears prick her eyes. Papa would want this for you. He'd want you to live fully, not just exist. I know, Camila whispered. I feel him sometimes in the vineyard, especially at sunset. I think he's pleased. They embraced, and Bianca realized her jealousy had transformed into something purer, pride that her mother had been brave enough to open her heart again. By mid-morning, the festival was in full swing. Neighbors and friends arrived with instruments and food, turning the vineyard into a tapestry of music and movement. Raphael moved through it all with quiet confidence, directing the harvest, ensuring the press operated smoothly, but always keeping Camila in his sight. Valentina watched them from beneath an olive tree, her journal open but blank. She'd intended to write, but found herself simply observing instead. The way Raphael anticipated Camila's needs, bringing her water before she asked, steadying her elbow when she stumbled on uneven ground. The way Camila touched his shoulder when passing, a small gesture of connection that spoke volumes. They're good together, aren't they? Old Giuseppe settled beside her, his weathered face creased with approval. Your papa built this vineyard with love. Raphael and your mama are saving it the same way. How do you know it's real? Valentina asked. How do you know he won't leave? Giuseppe chuckled. Because I've seen him at dawn every day for 6 months, training new vines with the patience of a man planning for years ahead. Because I've watched him hold your mother when she cried over failed harvests and celebrate with her when the grapes finally thrived. Love isn't the dramatic moments, piccola. It's the 1,000 small choices to stay and build together. Valentina understood then. She'd written countless poems about lightning strike romance, but what her mother had found was something deeper, the slow, steady burn that lasted. As afternoon melted into evening, Raphael took his place on a makeshift stage, guitar in hand. The crowd settled, and he began to play, not the wandering musician's repertoire, but a song he'd clearly composed here, in this place, for this woman. Camila stood at the edge of the crowd, her face radiant with emotion as Raphael sang in Italian, his voice rough with feeling. I was a ghost among the living, a shadow passing through, until I found this garden, until I found you. Your hands taught mine to plant, your heart taught mine to stay. Now roots grow deep in this blessed earth, where I finally found my way. Sophia captured it all through her lens, not just Raphael performing, but the tears streaming down her mother's face, the way the sunset painted them both in gold, the moment Raphael set down his guitar and pulled Camila into his arms while the crowd erupted in applause. But Sophia also captured something else, her own reflection in a wine glass, the way she'd finally lowered her camera to simply witness the moment instead of hiding behind it. Learning, at last, to be present. When the song ended, the 3 sisters found themselves moving toward their mother and Raphael as if drawn by invisible threads. The crowd parted for them, sensing the significance of the moment. Bianca spoke first. Raphael, we want you to know that we see how you care for our mother. How you've helped save this place. How you've given her back her light. We spent yesterday being foolish, Valentina continued, holding on to things that don't matter. But what matters is that Mama is happy. Truly, deeply happy. And we want you to know you have our blessing, Sophia finished. Not that you need it, but we want you both to know we support this. Completely. Camila looked between her daughters, understanding passing across her face that there was more to this declaration than simple acceptance. But she didn't question it, just gathered all 3 into an embrace. My girls, she whispered. My beautiful, thoughtful girls. Raphael stepped forward, his eyes bright with unshed tears. I promise you I will spend every day earning the trust you're placing in me. Your mother is the greatest gift I've ever received, and I won't take it lightly. Just love her, Bianca said simply. The way she deserves. That's all we ask. As the festival continued around them, the family stood together in a tight circle, Camila radiant, Raphael humbled, and 3 daughters who'd learned that the truest love wasn't about claiming someone for yourself, but about wanting their happiness above all else. The evening deepened into night, and someone began a traditional dance. Raphael pulled Camila into the circle, and the sisters watched them move together, her steps leading, his following, both laughing when he stumbled. It wasn't perfect or polished, but it was real. "I think I need to go back to Barcelona," Bianca said suddenly, "and actually pursue the restaurant I've been dreaming about. Stop waiting for someone to validate my talent." "I'm going to submit my manuscript," Valentina decided. "The one I've been too scared to send out. And I'm going to call that literature professor and apologize for being an idiot." "I have a gallery showing in Milan next month," Sophia added. "And I'm going to include the Santorini photograph. Not as a shrine to a moment that passed, but as part of a series about learning to hope." They watched their mother dance, her face tilted up to Raphael's, both of them caught in their own world. And the sisters understood they were watching the ending of one story and the beginning of another. For their mother, yes, but also for themselves. As the moon rose over Vale Rosa, casting silver light across the vineyard, the harvest festival reached its crescendo. Raphael returned to his guitar, but this time he played the old love song their father used to sing, and Camilla sang along, her voice strong and clear, honoring the past while standing firmly in the present. The three daughters joined hands, standing together as they'd always done, but this time looking forward instead of back. They'd each carried a piece of Raphael in their hearts, but now they understood he'd never been meant to be theirs. He'd been a messenger, teaching each of them something they needed to learn before delivering himself to the one woman who could give him what he'd been searching for, home. And in learning to let him go, they'd freed themselves to find their own homes, their own loves, their own versions of happiness that didn't depend on fantasies or moments frozen in time. The festival ended near midnight with fireworks bursting over the vineyard, gold and silver against the velvet sky. Bianca, Valentina, and Sophia stood with their arms around each other, watching their mother and Raphael silhouetted against the light, knowing that some endings were really just beginnings in disguise. Tomorrow they would return to their separate lives, but they would carry with them a truth learned in the soil of Vale Rosa, that love, real love, isn't about possession or fantasy. It's about recognizing goodness when you see it, celebrating it even when it's not yours to claim, and having the courage to build your own instead of living in dreams of what might have been. The vineyard would continue to grow, season after season, roots deepening in the earth. And so would they. Lessons from Vale Rosa. Love honors the past while embracing the future. Camilla's journey shows us that opening your heart again after loss doesn't diminish what came before. It honors it by proving you learned how to love deeply enough that you're willing to risk it again. True partnership is built in ordinary moments, not fantasy. The sisters learned that lasting love isn't found in dramatic encounters or perfect moments, but in the daily choice to stay, build, and grow together through both sunshine and storm. Letting go of what might have been frees you to embrace what can be. By releasing their romanticized memories and accepting their mother's happiness, the daughters freed themselves to pursue real, present relationships rather than chasing the ghosts of fleeting connections. The deepest act of love is wanting someone's happiness more than your own desires. When the sisters chose to bless their mother's relationship despite their complicated feelings, they discovered that genuine love, familial or romantic, means celebrating others' joy even when it's not the story you imagine for yourself.